Right, now we've removed one of the brake blocks. We don't really need to remove the other brake block as well. The wheel will wiggle in. You'll be able to push it and wiggle it past the other brake block. When the brake blocks are supplied, they're supplied in this strange up position. What you've got to do is just loosen that brake block off and turn it through 90 degrees so it lines up with the wheel before you try and push the wheel in. Right, now we've got to get the wheel into this slot on either side, and what we're trying to achieve is the wheel right at the top of the slot there. So what we'll do, we'll hold the wheel right at the top of the slot, and first of all we'll put on this tab washer, which has got a tab on it, and we'll drop the tab into that hole. Then we'll put a round washer on, and then we'll put the nut on, and we'll tighten the nut up finger tight, and we'll do the same to the other side. We'll make sure that we hold the wheel tight so that it is sitting right at the top of the slot. The shaft is sitting right at the top of the slot, and then we'll put that washer on, the tab washer, so that the tab drops into the hole again. We'll put a plain washer on top, and then we'll put the nut on, and we'll tighten it up finger tight. And then finally we should be able to use our 16mm spanner to tighten the whole assembly and run this side. Now finally what we need to do is to check that we've done everything up in the middle and that you have managed to achieve a central position. So what we need to do is just check that the gap in that side of the wheel and that side of the wheel is about the same. You might want to check it with your finger. That's just to make sure that the wheel is not one way or the other and that it's sitting nice and upright. But we should have achieved that by pushing this into the tops of the slots. We're now going to fit this brake block that we took off. But it is quite important that you put things back in the right order. First of all, there are two what they call cup washers, which have got little cutouts in them. They're spherical cutouts, and we've got two spherical washers. Okay, now you'll see that there's a thin one and a thick one. So the thin spherical washer goes on to the brake block first, and then we'll put one of the spherical washers on top of that. And then we put that whole assembly through, and obviously the curved part of the brake block goes upwards to match the inside diameter of the tyre. You can wiggle that in, and now we can put the thick spherical seat on top, and then the washer, and then the plain washer, and then finally we can put the nut on. Now the nut in one end has got a hexagon drive slot, so don't use that end first. Put the threaded end, the fully threaded end, onto the brake block. So now what we need to do is to set the brake block in a position where you can see maybe 1 or 2 millimeters of the silver rim around the outside of the brake block. You must make sure that the brake block doesn't touch the rubber tyre. And then hold the brake block in that position and tighten up. And after you've tightened it up, just make sure that you can see silver metal around the outside of the brake shoe itself. Something really strange about these brakes, and it may mention something this in the manual, but at the moment the wheel is not free spinning, but that's because this whole brake assembly is biased that way. Now there's a spring on the brakes here. Let's first of all get a Phillips screwdriver, which is a number 2 Phillips screwdriver, and you'll notice this screw here is actually sticking out quite a long way. We can press the whole of this caliper assembly, or we can pull the caliper assembly away, and you'll see that it's still touching, wanting to go back and touch on the wheel. Wind it in probably till there's about 3 or 4 millimeters of screw showing, and all of a sudden you'll find that the tension would start to disappear. You can carry on winding it in about another 1 or 2 millimeters, and all of a sudden it's only just touching on the surface. And if we wind it in just a little bit more, we'll find the whole brake goes into a balanced position where the spring on this side is balancing the spring on the other side. We need to make sure that there's virtually no pressure on either side. So once we've set this, we should find that the wheel, I think it's the mudguard rubbing. Yeah, a little bit of adjustment, friendly adjustment on the mudguard. And there we go. It's nothing to do with the brakes at all, that rubbing noise. It was all to do with the mudguard rubbing. We've got the scooter standing on its stand now. We're now going to fit the handlebar, but before we can do that we need to just remove this cap off the end of the stem. Whatever you do, don't do something silly like that. Make sure that these two cables are sitting in front of this stem before you assemble it into here. So we'll assemble that into there gently. So at this point we have the ability to adjust this up and down to suit whatever age child or whatever height child it's designed for. Now what we need to do first of all is to remove this piece of velcro protection, and then I'm going to turn the scooter around now because what you need to see is at the back. So I'm holding the wheel in line with the scooter with my feet, and what I'm now going to do is tighten up this bolt head just here. So I tighten it up clockwise until I feel a little bit of tension, and then I shall be able to adjust this until the handlebars sit directly across the scooter. And now we're finally put quite a lot of tension on there. With my wheel locked against my feet, I should be able to move the handlebars quite firmly and it not move. If the handlebars move, you haven't done up this screw tight enough. So that's the handlebars set for height and locked up. These brake grippers are a little bit on the loose side. They're purposely loose, obviously, to go into the packaging. But what we need to do is lock them up into a position that feels comfortable. So we can just use our 5mm key and lock them into a position. So the front brake is absolutely perfect. It's pulling on nice and quickly, and we've got about probably maybe 10mm of gap there when the brake is nicely on. This one, it's nearly at full adjustment here. Look, it's nearly closed onto the handlebars, and I think that this brake needs to be adjusted at the back so that it pulls on sooner, because it won't take long for the brake pads to wear, and then this piece of the handlebar will be touching on here and there'll be no stopping power on the rear brake. So we need to adjust the rear brake. You'll notice at no stage have I bothered with these. Now here's where we need the 5mm Allen key, and basically what we're going to do is to undo this screw here, holding this rear brake onto the rim, and then I'm going to push this one onto the rim. So I've locked it up tight at the moment, but I've not fully tightened this cable up. So what we're doing now is, hopefully with this one I should be able to gently pull the brake on and pull the cable back through the fitting just. Now we've got about 2mm of clearance on there. The handlebar looks good. So we'll tighten that up. So now we've got the right amount of clearance between the brake pads and the rim. But just like the front wheel, although it's not as bad, I can see that this pad here is just rubbing on this rim. So if we adjust this screw up gently, we should be able to pull this brake pad just away from the rim so that we've got nice clearance on either side. That's brilliant. Just make sure we tighten that up. So now you'll see that this rear brake has now got about 10mm of gap in there, which is beautiful, and it's locking on the rear wheel solidly. So here we are, all finally assembled. ready for the kiddies to enjoy. Relatively speaking, it's been trouble-free. As I anticipated, there might be a few quality problems associated with the assembly because they're not fully adjusted, but as an engineer it doesn't worry me at all. But that's the reason why I'm doing this video, so that you can just see some of the details that you might need to be careful of. So despite my reservations about it coming from China, when I purchased it, I realised and knew that. Everybody's comments said it was a good piece of kit. And I have to say that despite a few small quality setting issues, the general product is very, very good. It's sturdy, it's robust, it looks well made, and it's a very good price for the product. So I'd have to give it 5 stars.